Yeah. It's like, yeah.
Go buy the Cucina di Cafarina pasta sauce. It's better than your mama's gravy. I'm just telling you that right now. Go ahead and fight me on it. 5.0. You're not going to get a better sauce out of the jar from a store than Cucina di Cafarina.
Good morning, it's Ron Kaplan from New England Restaurant Expose, and we're having a little technical difficulty here. If you can bear with us a minute. We have Madeline and Mike from A&E Roasters out of New Hampshire, and right now, bear with me 1 minute, Madeline and Mike.
I love coffee. Coffee loves me.
Mike and coffee sitting in a
Tree.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, guys.
Hey there, Ron.
Hi. Good morning.
Can you see me?
Yes, we can.
Ken.
Okay. So let's talk about coffee.
Coffee talk.
Tell us all about what makes A&E different than everybody else.
Sure. Yeah. Where to start? I think the place that it makes the most sense to start when it comes to talking about coffee is at origin. So the countries where the coffee is actually grown. Now, a lot of these places, are part of the underdeveloped parts of the world, right? So we start by working with fair trade farms. So all of our coffee, we're paying a premium over the cost of the coffee itself that is going to social programs in the countries where the coffee is grown and on the farms where the coffee is grown. So that's stuff like education, it's farm equipment, it's creating a safer environment for the people who are working there, and it's also paying them a higher wage. So that's something that can make a really big difference, because a lot of, same as in America, a lot of farm workers are vastly underpaid all over the world. So starting there, we're working with coffees that, when the workers are treated better, I really feel like you can taste the difference in the product. So that's the first way that our coffee is different. A lot of our coffee is also organic. The majority of our coffee is organic as well. So that's sort of a sustainable growing process that is also healthier for the people who are growing it. Whether it necessarily has an impact on flavor is kind of up for debate. But so that's another thing that, like, just starting from like when the coffee beans are still on the tree, that makes our coffee different. So
and I think I'll segue off of that into what makes A&E unique, I think, is that we're not just a company that's for your caffeine fix, right?
Right. Yeah.
We want to represent more of a transparent story of where coffee's actually coming from.
Exactly.
And it's a little intimidating in the specialty coffee world because there's some highbrow attitudes about coffee and this and that. There's an overwhelming amount of information about coffee that people have a hard time understanding. And here at A&E, we're very approachable when it comes to that specialty coffee realm, to actually draw a connection to where your coffee's coming from, how it's actually gotten into your cup to drink in the morning, and what goes behind that. Like I said, more than just a caffeine fix.
Yeah. So
being more than that.
So going back to origin, so one of the ways that our coffee is different is we have a number of coffees throughout the season that we're buying directly from the farmers. So in addition to being fair trade, some of our coffee is direct trade. So when you're buying coffee directly from the people who are growing it, as in with any business with vertical integration, every step along the supply chain, more value has to be put into the product in order to be able to pay everybody whose hands it crosses across the way. So when it's being bought directly, again, more of that like upfront cost of the coffee is going directly to the people who are growing it, which you know, just again goes back into quality and to economic fairness, you know. So that's something that I think a lot of people, even if you don't drink coffee, you can kind of get behind that, right? But we are.
I got a quick question. I got a quick question for you.
Sure.
What makes coffee certified organic?
So organic certification is pretty complicated, but it mostly has to do with the pesticides that are used on the coffee plants when they're being grown. So it's a little bit different everywhere. I think maybe you might know a little bit more about this than me.
Yeah, maybe a little bit. I mean, really, if you want to just cut down to it, there can't be use of any other chemical substance within the growing process. Mm-hmm. So you can't have insecticides, you can't have pesticides. And there's a little bit of a list as far as separating organic coffee from conventional coffee operations and things like that. And I want to kind of say that what organic coffee actually brings to the table for here at A&E is that we're all about nuances of flavor, and organic coffee, just like any other crop, whether it be apples, organic apples, or strawberries, anything like that across the agriculture realm, there's a distinct difference between what you see in, say, an organic apple and what you taste in an organic apple versus, say, a mass-produced commercial, I don't know, strawberry farm somewhere else or something like that. And that's not to degrade something that's not organic, but it brings more of a specialty coffee to the table itself, being organic. Yeah, it's interesting.
It's a little bit less adulterated. Yeah.
So what do you say to the person that puts cream and sugar in? I drink coffee black. You got to try it.
Each his own.
Yeah,
each his own.
We're not black coffee snobs, even though we drink our coffee black most of the time because we want to be able to sort of identify those nuances, which cream and sugar are definitely going to influence the way a coffee tastes, but we just want people to enjoy the coffee that they're drinking.
I think that's what makes A&E a little bit unique too, is that we're not going to tell you what's good and what isn't. There's a lot of these corporate franchise commercial chains of coffee that say our coffee is this good, and you taste it, and that's what is good about coffee. That's what tastes good about coffee. And that's just not true. You know, taste preference is a very subjective thing.
Absolutely.
And we have a wide spectrum of coffees for someone who drinks it black, like yourself, or somebody who wants cream and sugar and wants that French roast and something bold in the morning. We have the whole kit and caboodle, Ron. We got the whole kit and caboodle for you.
Yeah, and when we're developing a coffee or developing a new blend, for example, we generally always are tasting the coffee both black and with cream or sugar. That way we can sort of tell both like how the coffee tastes by itself, which a lot of coffee out there in the world, if you don't add something to it, it can taste kind of gross. And I hear that from people all the time. They're like, I don't like black coffee, right? They're like, I think it tastes absolutely disgusting. I need cream and sugar in it, right? Which, you know, that's your opinion. That is probably based on your experiences. But, you know, sometimes with specialty coffee and roasters who are only focused on the product as it tastes when you drink it black, you know, my roommate has said to me, like, I think that those coffees taste disgusting when you add cream and sugar to it. And sometimes that's absolutely true, because when you're mostly focused on that like acidity component and the like fruitiness and all those nuances, which are wonderful and delicious, but then those are completely kind of eliminated by cream and sugar. So you kind of have to have a balance, and you have to be realistic about what customers want. And for a lot of people, it's a sweet, light coffee drink. I like my coffee light and sweet too sometimes. It's tasty.
So tell me, you guys buy the beans, and then what's the machine behind you? Is that where you do the roasting?
This is the roaster right here. So Yeah, you can see, and it's a wonderful machine, and it's for the true artisan, which I'm a continuous student of that craft. And roasting is, so when we buy the coffee beans, there's a whole process as far as the coffee from where it starts from all the way across the world. And it's grown, and so much heart and soul goes into creating this green coffee and packaging it and going through this and then shipping it thousands of miles out here to us. And we have we're a very meticulous breed here at A&E. Maybe not a passion for coffee, but how about a healthy obsession?
Yeah, absolutely.
Healthy obsession about coffee, about deciding what coffee to choose. And once we make a decision of what coffee we want, then it will go into that roaster that's right behind me. And that's where some true sorcery comes into play. There's kind of an alchemical form because it's not automated, it's all manual, it's all craft, and there's an interesting roasting still in the dark ages, Ron. So even with all these technological advancements in food science and stuff, there's still a lot that's unknown about it. And luckily for me, Madeline is so talented, and we have a very talented team, and it takes a team effort to find out what we can do to really let this coffee sing to its full potential from where it's coming from.
Yeah, so once we have the coffee that we've chosen from, half a dozen samples most of the time, we do a couple passes on it in this roaster. We brew it in a bunch of different ways, probably every coffee before it goes to the customer. We're brewing it in a French press, we're brewing it in a pour over, we're brewing it as an automatic drip. So we're kind of taking some of the most common ways that people are brewing their coffee at home, and we drink it that way ourselves so that we can kind of expect what a customer is going to experience when it gets into their cup at home. So that experience and that kind of moment of appreciation and aesthetic and artistic kind of sensory enjoyment of the coffee, we're really analyzing every sort of moment that the coffee spends in your mouth and all the different ways that it can be prepared for.
We feel we will not send a coffee out the door unless we feel absolutely confident about it. So quality control is, that's a meticulous feat.
Yeah, it is probably one of the main things that, besides our main individual job responsibilities, our whole team comes together sometimes for up to an hour every day just to drink coffee and talk about what we like about it, what we don't like about it, how we might change it, what could be manipulated about it to make it more enjoyable for each of us and hopefully for our customers at home also.
Great.
Cheers to that.
We're going to take a quick commercial. We'll be right back.
Sure.
Okay, we're back with Mike and Madeline of A&E Coffee Roasters out of New Hampshire. Owned by John Resnick, a native of Cranston, Rhode Island. So let's talk about your tea.
Sure. So I, Madeline, am our customer service and production specialist. So I sort of deal with, my job is pretty big. I do a lot of different things from
many hats.
From doing quality control, serving customers in our roastery, helping our wholesale customers, and other odd responsibilities like barista training. All of our baristas in our 2 cafes get over 6 hours of after hours training to sort of prime them for the hardships of barista life. And I also do a little bit of graphic design for the company as well. So all of our special reserve bags and different seasonal blends, I do the artwork for. And then we have Mike. Mike, do you want to talk about roasting and your roasting responsibilities a little bit?
Yeah, I know. I certainly can. But I know, Ron, did you have any specific questions that you wanted to hit on about our product first?
Yeah, I'd like to know exactly what countries are you getting your beans from, like, as in that proprietary information?
No, that's something that actually we take a lot of pride in, and we try to be as transparent as possible about. So right now we have a coffee from Colombia. We have 2 coffees from Ethiopia. We have a coffee from Honduras. We have a coffee from Rwanda, Brazil, Nicaragua. Am I missing anything? We have a coffee from Hawaii. It's a Kona coffee from Kona. Really good stuff. So that's actually grown in America. Let's see.
We go global.
Yeah.
We're global. We hit all the corners, and really there's so much to be said about each one of those coffees. We could have an entire podcast just on one of those coffees alone to talk about the details of where that's coming from and what goes into that.
But we sort of have a special focus on Central and South American coffees. We source, I think, probably the majority of our coffees from that region, not just because it's the closest and easiest to transport, but there's also a really broad range of coffees available from that continent. And our founder, Emrin Langmaid, who started the company 20 years ago, has a special connection to those areas because she came from the textile industry. So that was sort of her first introduction to, the countries of Guatemala, countries in Africa. That was sort of her opening into coffee. So,
and so now I can kind of jump on that as far as what my job is as a roaster.
Okay.
All these beans that are coming from all over the world have a unique signature about them, and they're all very, very different, and it all requires almost a completely different roasting recipe for every single one. Like if you have a coffee from Ethiopia and it's in this really high volcanic soil, the beans are different where they grow compared to, say, the subtropic regions around the equator. We have this lush rainforest, low altitude type coffee that develops these really big, large beans like Colombia or something. And so as a roaster, it's a constant challenge to stay on top of it, use science, use art, it's very arcane craft, and also make it so it's approachable for people and it's not so intimidating as well. So like I said, there's a lot that goes into what we're doing. We're trying to convey it here as best we can, but really as a company, we're very personable, we're very approachable. It doesn't matter if your coffee knowledge is basic or how extensive it gets. We would love to talk to you if you have a curiosity about coffee in general.
Yeah, exactly. In our warehouse, we have like 40 years of combined experience between just 4 people. So but every single one of us is customer facing every day. Every single one of us every day is talking to someone who has never had a coffee from a single origin before, or who has never thought about coffee besides at the drive-through, So we're pretty hands-on, and we're all really try to be as clued in as possible as to what the average consumer is thinking and feeling about their coffee. So besides the 2 of us, there's Mike and I, and then Emrin Langmaid, our founder, who I mentioned, and she's a very talented woman. She does tons of different things. It's kind of hard to summarize everything that she does to keep our wheels turning.
The conductor.
Yeah, exactly. She's the captain of the ship. And then we have Rachel Nini, who's the director of our wholesale operations and our quality control team. So she's kind of
a tight group.
Yeah, we've got just 4 people in the warehouse here most of the time, and we are all working together in different capacities every day. So it's fun. We all get along really well.
A healthy obsession with coffee.
Exactly. We all share the same passion. So even though we come from different walks of life and really different backgrounds, we all kind of we get along really well because we all care about the same thing. We all have one mission, so it's a beautiful thing.
How do I buy your coffee?
How do you buy our coffee? So we are we're in 3 retail locations in New Hampshire. We've got our cafe in Manchester, our cafe in Amherst, and our retail space here in our Nashua warehouse. And then you can also buy our coffee and have it shipped anywhere in the United States online at aeroastery.com. So that's the best way to get it if you're not local.
So let me ask you, without mentioning any names, how do you say the differences between a drive-through, not mentioning any names, some of those big donut shops versus your coffee?
Yeah, so there's a couple ways that distinctly makes us different that I think any consumer can taste. One of those being wow, I completely drew a blank.
Well, you know what? It's hard because you don't want to criticize that.
Right.
That's their business model, right? And we come from a completely different direction. I think that we've all encountered going through a drive-through, you're on your way to work or whatever it is that you're doing, and you pick up this cup out of your cup holder and it tastes like, muddy water, right? And you're kind of you have no idea why you went and spent $3 on this cup of coffee. And the only real reason I can say is that they kind of forced this idea that that's what good coffee actually is.
Right.
And I wouldn't agree with that. If that's good, if that's your taste, if that's what you like, that's totally fine. But we come from a very honest approach from coffee, that we're not trying to force coffee onto anybody. We want to let our coffee speak for itself.
Right. Yeah.
And I think some of the differences that you're going to find if you compare us to, say, one of those larger chain things and stuff like that is maybe, I don't know what you want to say. It's a completely different goal that we each have in mind. I
would say one of the main things that people comment on that you can just tell right away is the aroma of freshly roasted coffee versus, any place, whether that's a supermarket or a gas station or a drive-through of whatever you're choosing. Those coffee beans were roasted like upwards of 6 months ago, sometimes even a year ago. So the second that you walk into any of our cafes or any of our retail shops, or if you're getting a package and you open it up, you can smell so much more aroma and freshness just coming off of the bean. So right away,
and we can get as technical as we want too, because we can get into the beans themselves, when they were roasted, the price, is where these coffee beans are coming from, their brew methods. We can go all the way down the line as to what these large chain companies are doing versus what we're doing.
We also, all of our coffee is roasted in small batches. So because it's a lot smaller a batch size, we're paying a lot more attention to every bean proportionally. So that I think makes a really big difference in terms of the depth and complexity of flavor that you're going to get out of every coffee bean. It's something that I think any person who has a cup of the donut shop coffee in one hand and has a cup of coffee that they got from any small local roaster should probably be able to say, wow, like this, I think there's a pretty noticeable difference. But
is there seasonality?
Seasonality for coffee. Depending on where in the world you are growing the coffee, coffee grows on an evergreen tree, so it doesn't ever lose its leaves. There's always new berries growing off of it. But generally, every country that grows coffee has a different harvesting season. So that sort of determines the rotation of crops throughout the year. So generally, we are always roasting coffee that is less than a year old. It was picked less than a year ago, which is another difference between us and the other guys, sort of. So you don't know when any coffee that you got on the shelf at the grocery store was picked, there is like 100% certainty that any coffee beans that you get from us was picked within the past 365 days, which is pretty remarkable considering it comes from, you know, sometimes thousands and thousands of miles away.
And I think that that's part of the experience that we're trying to bring to you, is that we have full transparency about these types of things.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you can go into a store and get a cup of coffee and you don't really know anything about it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it can say Colombia, it can say Brazil or something, medium roast. And, you know, you have to do your homework. And we actually want to bring this information to you and tell you about the farmers that we interact with and do business with. And I think that there's a lot to be said for that.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And the sort of the individual personal histories of the farmers that we work with is something that we take into consideration and hold really close to our hearts as well. So, for example, we just roasted this wonderful coffee from Rwanda, and the young man who is importing the coffee, his name is Francois, and he comes from a generations long family history of growing coffee in Rwanda that was disrupted by the Rwandan genocide in the late 90s. So, you know, to be able to buy his coffee and roast it and share that story and awareness of sort of that international issue through coffee beans is something that, you know, we feel is really important, and we feel really honored to be a part of that.
Most popular blend?
Our most popular blend, I would probably say the
Gunstock, maybe?
Yeah, generally the darker roasts are more popular, but we kind of have a cult following, especially for our Bonbon Espresso. So that is an espresso blend that we've been doing for years and years, and that we sell more of that than anything else. But
both of those coffees, you can put cream and sugar in,
yep,
but you can also drink it black too.
Yeah.
And they both taste delicious.
Yeah. As far as our single origin coffees, I would say probably the most popular farmer that we work with is a Norma Lara from Honduras. We've been buying Norma's coffee for 7 years, and every year her coffee just gets better and better. And every year, as soon as we have to discontinue the beans at some point because we just run out. And every year when we get her coffee beans back in, our customers are so excited to try that year's crop. So over the years, our customer base has really gotten invested in her coffee and her story. And we're pretty close friends with her also. We're pretty much all friends with her on Facebook. And we have been having pretty regular check-ins with her over FaceTime and over email for as long as COVID's been going on. But before international travel became restricted, we were going to Honduras once a year to go and visit her farm and see her kids and try her coffee in Honduras. So that's something that, because of the connection that we have, and especially that Emran, our founder, has to those farmers, we can bring a piece of that whole story to New Hampshire, to our customers in your coffee cup, which is pretty incredible if you ask me.
Personal favorites?
Ooh.
You had to ask that.
Yeah.
What
Depends
are you
on
drinking now, Mike?
So this is actually an experimental espresso that we're going to try to unfold in spring here.
Yeah.
And so we're kind of in this experimental stage. So that's why I'm trying. And so we've got a refill of this a couple times now.
Yeah,
so
this is our fourth shot of espresso for the day. But we figured as long as we were in the warehouse, we might as well do a little bit
taste
of
test.
Taste testing.
Multitasking here, Ron.
Yeah. So for me, I would say probably usually my favorite coffee is whatever's newest is the thing that I'm most excited about. We're definitely, we can't stop talking about the Rwandan coffee that we just got from Francois. But for me personally, I have to say again that Norma's coffee really holds a special place in my heart, and it really means everything to us.
What's that called again?
Norma Lara's coffee. We actually, as I mentioned, we run out of it every year, so we just finished roasting that coffee for the year, and absolutely breaks our hearts. But we're looking forward to getting new samples from her in the next month or two. Yeah, they just what?
And
we just got her samples for next year, for this past year's crop. So we'll be roasting those and tasting them really soon, which is exciting.
And I would just like to add a kind of final touch on what we're talking about is about the coffee itself. How we present it to the customers, we also want to represent where this coffee comes from. And besides Madeline wearing many hats, one of her hats is that she's a very talented artist. And so when we talk about the Honduras coffee, which is the Norma, Madeline is the one that designs our label with her on it. So that is the actual farmer down in Honduras. That's Norma. And speaking about the Rwandan coffee, which I also have here, we wanted to tie a connection to Francois with this Rwandan coffee. And so a simple thing to do is to find something that he also likes. And his his favorite animal is a gorilla, which represents that area very well. And so Madeline drew Francois's favorite animal, the gorilla, right there. And so when you receive our coffee, there's a lot that goes into the whole story arc of where it's coming from to when you have it right here in front of you. And that is also what makes us very unique. We don't have these generic bags and these generic labels and try to spice it up hipster style or something like that. It's very real. The aesthetic here is very, very real.
Yeah, I actually talked to Francois directly about sort of what the what animal he wanted to represent his coffee, and he said he loved the gorilla because it's so powerful. And something that I learned while I was doing research for the label and just looking for pictures of gorillas is actually that Rwanda has the majority of the remaining population of the Western gorilla living on sort of reservations there. So that's something that also by bringing money into that economy through coffee, you can help sort of contribute to all kinds of efforts to preserve our natural world. So that's kind of
cool. How often do you introduce a new brand, a new flavor?
We're getting new coffees all the time. It depends sort of on what we have and what we're running out of and what sort of kind of
it's a little bit of a revolving door.
Yeah,
we're always tasting, we're always trying, we always want to see what's out there. Yeah. We're very open to what the coffee world is going to also present to us. A lot of roasters, they stick with an origin and they kind of master that whole origin and they just kind of stick with that, and that's part of the mechanism to their business model. And for us, we're always trying to revolve out these special reserve coffees from. It can be from wherever, whether it be from Rwanda or Honduras. And I think, there's something very interesting about what also happens on a global level during these things that may delay or speed up when we get some of these coffees. So it's hard to really pinpoint an exact date of when we turn these over. But every few months, I feel like we're trying to find something new to bring to the customer from around the world.
I was going to say, I feel like it's probably if I had to put a timeline on it, it's about maybe every 6 weeks to 2 months that we're introducing a whole new coffee. And the process of taking a sample to roasting it and then deciding whether we want to buy it and then receiving that coffee and then roasting that coffee and testing it, that usually takes about that timeline as well. So usually just around the time that we are finishing up getting a new coffee on the shelves, we're getting a new coffee that we're going to be going through the whole cycle with all over again. So it's constant. It's constant.
You're not complacent.
Right.
We're not complacent. We're having to always adapt to what's coming through the door.
Right.
And one of the things, I'll just do a little tidbit here of say a Kona Coffee that came from Hawaii. A few years ago, there was enormous volcanic activity that was happening out there, and that affects the coffee, and it affects the growth cycles of it. It affects the shipping, it affects everything. But now, we have this coffee now, but we're dealing with a biological product here. We're not dealing with something that's fabricated or made. We have to kind of roll with what the world is actually presenting to us as well.
Yeah.
So can't get complacent.
Absolutely. Yeah. Nothing is
a healthy obsession is a good thing in the coffee world.
Right. Yeah. It's life. It's life for us. It's all the time.
Well, in closing, tell people why A&E Coffee is so different than everything else on the market shelf.
Yeah. Well, it's just the amount of care that we put into the coffee from the second that from the first moment that tree is planted all the way up until we're putting it in bags and selling it to you. We're doing everything we possibly can to give you the best product and the tastiest product possible. It's not about what's the most expensive or the cheapest, or what's popular the year before. It's about what tastes the best and what is going to be the most enjoyable and most delightful, bring you the most happiness, right?
And the only thing I want to add to that is that we really want to tell you the story and give you an experience with the cup of coffee, and not, I'm going to repeat this. We just don't want to be your caffeine fix for the day. We really want to show you the soul of the coffee that we're trying to bring to you. And it takes a lot of heart and soul, from the first seed that gets dropped thousands of miles away in the world to get all the way into your kitchen with a cup of coffee. We really want to try to bring the soul of that coffee's journey with you. And it's especially in these times, we don't want you to take coffee for granted. It's a good time to be grateful about the little things, with all that happens in the world, and it can even be in the smallest things, a cup of coffee.
Yeah.
Well, Madeline, Mike, from A&E Coffee, thank you. And whether you're a restaurant or just a consumer, you can get A&E Coffee. Go on their website and try it out. It's great. In my house, we've been drinking it for the last 3 weeks, and it's fantastic.
Thank you so much, Ron.
Yeah,
we really appreciate it. Life happens, coffee helps.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Thank
Have a
you.
good day. Bye-bye.
Bye.